Okay, so what about the contribution of women in science in general in the past? Well, if we look at this slide here, this shows the percentage of degrees awarded to women in certain key professions over the last 50 years. Now, obviously, there's a major upward trend, especially since the 1970s. And this in part reflects some of the social and political changes happening at the time. So we can see that, for example, for 2001 and 2002, that women were very much in the majority when it came to degrees in veterinary science and pharmacy. Just over 70% in veterinary science and just under 70% in pharmacy. But as you can see from the curves on the graph here, this hasn't always been the case. So that while women may have received an overwhelming majority of veterinary science degrees in, let's say, the year 2000, by contrast, before the 1950s, there were virtually no such degrees awarded to women. And then in the early 1970s, you have a radical shift with a huge number of degrees awarded to women in pretty much all subjects, in fact. That increase isn't universal. As we can see, in comparison to pharmacy and veterinary degrees, it's interesting to note that, for example, in medicine and dentistry, women are still underrepresented, still in a minority, with men accounting for more than 50% of graduates in both disciplines. So let's just quickly recap on the main figures again. For professional veterinary and pharmacy degrees awarded in 2001 and 2002, women accounted for around 70% of graduates in both subjects, compared to less than 50% in medicine and dentistry. And almost no veterinary degrees were awarded before the 1950s. Okay, now, just for comparison, this next slide shows a similar pattern between the early 70s and the first few years of this century. And there's a clear relationship, I think, between subject discipline and the relative percentage of men and women being awarded degrees. For example, the figure of only 0.8% of engineering degrees being awarded to women in 1970 and 1971, compared with the figure of 18.9% for 2001 and 2002. Now, although this is clearly a significant increase, male graduates still outnumbered women by a wide margin. It's clear that only in the biological sciences and health sciences were women graduates in the majority in 2001 and 2002. 60.8% and 85.5%, respectively. So it is hardly surprising then that prior to the 1970s, the contribution of female scientists in many fields appears to have been quite limited. But is that really the true picture?